Hello, I'm Michael Raymond. I'm an instructor with the National Cave Rescue Commission. In this presentation, I'm going to teach you how to serve on the command team in a cave rescue. For those of you from the caving world, I'm going to show you how to serve in the command post. For those of you from the emergency management world, I'm going to show you how cave rescues are going to force you to manage differently. Cave rescue has interesting leadership challenges. Caves have cold and wet working conditions. They have long travel times, which can be because of small tunnels, rock piles to scramble over, and areas requiring rope work. There's limited communication inside caves. The twisting tunnels means that radio signals just don't get through. Most cave rescues are implemented by volunteers working together for the first time, and there are many crucial support tasks which are unglamorous and difficult to recruit for. These leadership challenges lead to common errors. The initial phases of a cave rescue are complex, and leaders grow their staffs too slowly to tame the chaos. This causes them to focus on the current effort and ignore identifying what needs to happen next. Leaders also micromanage teams operating far away inside the cave. Now, if there's bad leadership, there can also be bad followership, and teams operating inside the cave do not keep their leaders informed of what's going on. This leads to a breakdown in situational awareness, which can have lost equipment and delays in starting important tasks. The solution to this is good leadership. At its most basic level, leadership looks like doing four things in a continuous loop. Identify tasks and the reasons to do them. Assign them to subordinates. Provide the needed resources. And synchronize to ensure tasks happen in the right sequence and locations and that they support the end goal. Where should you be as a leader? Most leaders want to be out front with the troops getting involved in the interesting work. An alternative is to be at the point of the greatest complexity, lending your guidance. In a cave rescue, you really need to be in the command post, though. This is so that when people come looking for you, they know where to find you, and you also have access to the best communications. When you're working in a command post, if you only do one thing, you need to keep a journal or a log. This will serve as your task tracker, but also keep a record of all the important pieces of information so that many hours later you're able to quickly reference it instead of wasting time looking for that information. You'll want to keep some type of map. On this map, you'll be able to look at the progress of the patient and where your different teams are. You'll also be able to note the important locations within the cave, camps, communication checkpoints, and gear caches. Also, those significant obstacles, so you're going to need to send teams to help prepare those obstacles so that the patient can pass through them. You'll probably also want some type of org chart. This is for accountability, but also to make sure that you have the right people working together for the right leadership. In an incident, you're going to want to make sure that someone is doing each of the functions of the incident command system. For a simple rescue, one person may be performing multiple functions. In a larger or more complicated rescue, you may have many people working on each function. In the following slides, we're going to dive into each of the functions. We'll discuss the caving-related challenges for each function and examine tools to overcome them. We're going to start with plans. Every cave rescue steps through the same 6 phases. By understanding what phase you're in, it helps you to identify the tasks that need to get done and the tasks that need to get done after them. One job of the plans team is to identify and organize those tasks. Let's look at the phases. Phase 0 happened before the incident. It's what you did to get ready. Phase 1 started with someone getting hurt, lost, or trapped, and concluded with the activation of an emergency response. Phase 2 involves finding the patients and stabilizing them so that in Phase 3 you can get everything into place and evacuate the patient. Phase 4 is the immediate follow-up and includes degrading the cave and identifying lessons learned. In the last phase, the priority is to make the landowner happy so they'll allow more caving in the future. It also involves resetting resources and taking steps to implement the lessons learned. When you're serving on the plans team, you'll work on organizing the task list and tracking the situation. In the early phases of a rescue, you'll have very little information, and most of your questions will need to get answered by interviewing people exiting the cave, as well as talking to local cavers and people who know the patients. For advanced rescues, you'll need to establish a plan to fill the gaps in your information. Make sure people know what to look for. You'll also create an incident action plan. The incident action plan takes the incident commander's concept of how the overall operation is going to go. It's going to combine in the particulars of the cave and the resources available. And it's going to lay out a series of sub-objectives so you can get from where you're right now to that shared common goal at the end of the rescue. You're going to include enough detail so that when operations gets your incident action plan, they have everything that they need to begin to execute it. One way you may develop your incident action plan is as an execution matrix. That is, for each time period, you're going to show what you want each team to be doing. This will allow you to make sure that everything is done in sequence, and will allow each team to understand what every other team is doing. You'll then hand this execution matrix over to the operations team. In operations, you'll pull objectives and tasks from the plan section. The teams under you will execute those tasks, and you'll coordinate between them. Pay special attention to assessing your progress. Things won't go as you expect. You're responsible for adjusting priorities so that you can apportion resources and get things back on track. Because of the caving-related challenges we mentioned earlier, your teams must be prepared to operate with a minimum of supervision. Make sure you give them a good briefing and inspection while they're still on the surface. It's critical to make them give you a back brief. What's a back brief? When you brief someone, what you think you told them, what they think you told them is usually very different. By having them tell you in their own words what they think you told them, you'll find all sorts of misunderstandings. You'll get a similar benefit by having them rehearse any complicated tasks. Lastly, make use of underground branch directors anytime that multiple teams have to interact. Assign the teams to work for these underground leaders who can provide on-the-spot coordination and expertise. You may find that there's a small number of important decisions that the incident commander is going to be responsible for. A good tool to tackle that is a decision support matrix. In a decision support matrix, you identify that small number of critical decisions that the incident commander is going to have to make, and you lay out the criteria that are going to help to guide what decision gets made. This is going to do great things for the staff because they know the important decisions that are coming up, and they know that those pieces of information that they need to actively go out and collect so that good decisions can be made. Logistics. Logistics is the foundation of everything that we do. In small cave rescues, we think of logistics as being a gear cache, but it's a lot more than that. There's the movement of that equipment, getting it where it needs to go. There's the maintenance, repair, and acquisition of the equipment. There's setting up communications so we can do knowledge management. There's the taking care of the cavers. And, as you're acquiring your equipment, you want to make sure that all the equipment works well together and is also properly suited for working in a cave. So let's talk about those cavers. For getting cavers, there's a 4-step process that you're going to want to go through. The first step is reception. This is going out and identifying particular people and recruiting them to come and help, letting them know where to go, what to bring, and who to contact when they arrive, so that they can move into the staging area. The staging area is a protected, warm area where they can sleep, eat, drink, use the bathroom, and charge their electronics while they're waiting to be put into active service. Once it's time to use them, they move into onward movement, where they get briefed, they're doing their rehearsals, their back brief, and moving into the cave where they can meet their in-cave leadership and get integrated into the operation. In logistics, you build the infrastructure for communication and knowledge management. In the early phases of a cave rescue, most of your communication is going to be done by commuters. As teams go into the cave, you'll give them written notes to give to the people who are already in there. As teams commute out of the cave, they're going to visit the situation unit under plans, and they're going to get debriefed so that everyone knows what's going on. If you have a lot of extra people, you may choose to use couriers. That is, you're going to use runners with a specific task of delivering information and bringing it back. The best way for communicating is with field phones. You'll lay wire so you can connect in wired handsets. Radios would be great, except that they rarely work due to the twisting nature of the passages. They do come in handy for local communication, such as at loud waterfalls. We've talked about how you're going to communicate. The next question is where? Where are you going to put your communication hubs so that people know where they need to go to get on a phone, get the latest information, and give their updates? You'll also need to communicate with people outside the cave. You're going to have people traveling, people shopping, and people all over the incident site, and you need a way to reach them. In really large rescues, there are international efforts to provide resources and expertise. One solution is to set up instant messaging groups, such as with WhatsApp. Another solution is to put all your management documents on Google Docs. If people can view the plan and status that way, it will save you from having to answer a lot of phone calls and emails. Okay, so with gear, with supplies, you're going to have to anticipate the different needs so that you can get the right equipment and get it moving to the right place. A good tool for you to do that is to look at that execution matrix. From the execution matrix, you're going to be look at, for each operational period, who's going to be in the cave and where are they going to be. From that, you can make a projection about, okay, what are they going to need for food, for water, for batteries. And then you'll also be able to look at, okay, well, what are they actually doing? What gear are they going to need? From that, you'll be able to make a plan. You'll be able to go out, acquire those supplies, test them, get them packaged, and get them moved to where they need to be to resupply the team so that they can do their jobs. Finance. Well, if logistics is the foundation of everything we do, then finance is the bedrock. And in finance, the big problem that you're going to run into is that because most of our cave rescues are completely done by volunteers, we have no money. But you're still going to need to go out and make a few purchases, and there's plenty of equipment that's going to get damaged and or lost. And because of all this, and through all this, there's going to be misunderstandings about who's allowed to buy what and who's going to get what reimbursed. All right, what's the solution for doing this? Well, step one, solicit donations during the rescue, because after the rescue, no one's going to care. But hey, start asking for those donations early. Number two, inventory everything frequently. You're going to want to know after the rescue, well, we had this gear, but what gear did we have at the start of the rescue and what condition was it in? So we can know what got lost and what got damaged or what was already broken. This is going to drive a lot of your decision making about how to do reimbursements. And the last step is be very open about how you're doing those reimbursements. People may not agree with you, but if they understand and can see where all the money is going, they won't be able to ascribe you nefarious intentions. There's a few other important members of the staff. We do our best to keep cave rescues as quiet as possible, just to keep the amount of interactions that we have to have with outsiders to a minimum. But the media may decide to cover your incident, and if and when that happens, you'll need to appoint someone to act as the public information officer. The best way to do this job, is to be proactive. go out, get yourself a good map so you can show the status where everyone is, and get yourself some good imagery, both of the patients and of the things that are going on in the cave. You'll then be able to take these products, the map, the photos, the videos, give them to the media, and this will enable the media to do a quality job of telling our story. Another important staff member is the safety officer. As a cave rescue evolves, and as you put lots of people into a cave, the state of the cave is going to change. The more people that go through a cave, the more the conditions, the rocks, the things inside the cave are going to change. And you really need an independent observer to keep an eye on things and to see, what things are starting to get unsafe. That person's also going to be an angel for the patient, because the other teams are going to be focused on rigging and hauling and digging, and we really need someone specifically worried and taking care of that patient. Okay. So, speaking of pictures, here's a picture of a cave rescue command post from the Morja incident that recently happened in Turkey in 2023. And they're doing an operational period briefing. If you look around the command post tent, up on the walls, you can see maps, you can see paper, you can see whiteboards where they're recording all the information, and it's up there, it's visible for everyone to see, so everyone can stay, on the same picture, working on the same problems. In a complex rescue, there will be so many things going on that each section will quickly lose their grasp of the overall situation. Consider meeting frequently, perhaps once an hour for 5 minutes, to keep everyone up to date. The primary meeting is the operational period briefing. It gets the staff together to assess progress, get updates, and get briefed on the plan for the next period. You'll assess how well you're executing current tasks and if you're doing the right ones or should try something different. Updates about logistics, personnel, weather, and safety will influence your decision making. Lastly, the plans section will hand over responsibility for the next period to the operations section by making sure they're briefed and have everything they need. When you attend one of these meetings, bring your running estimate. Your running estimate is the status of all the personnel and resources you're responsible for. This knowledge will enable you to answer questions and participate in the decision making. All right, after the rescue. Now, we talked about in plans, in phases 4 and 5, that there's a few things that you're going to need to do at the end of a rescue. Most importantly, like we said, hey, make that landowner happy. Clean up the cave, clean up their property, say a big thank you to the landowner. With all your supplies, things are going to get lost, get damaged, money is going to get spent, and so you'll want to make sure that that gets taken care of. And then there's also the, hey, how do we do better next time? Now, there's a lot of different opinions on how to do this. One way is with a hot wash. Now, we know that in a big rescue, you're going to have lots of teams, and each team is only going to see a small part of the incident. And so a hot wash is a way to walk through the timeline, having each team talk about the highlights of what they did. And at the end, every team will know what every other team did, so they have a good understanding of a rescue. Another way to do things, and you may choose to do both, is to hold an after-action review. In an AAR, you're going to identify those things that went well so that you can sustain them and make sure that you do those things again next time. You will also identify those things that didn't go so well so that you can make a plan to go out and fix them. Other things you'll do is write up a quick report for American caving accidents, get it in the database, get it into our history. And then there's the going out and actually acting on the after-action review, getting your team better training, and improving your equipment. Okay, we've been talking at the theory level. Let's now get more concrete with a scenario. Here's a profile of our cave. In the upper right, we have 2 entrances. The lower entrance has a river flowing into it with a few inches of airspace between the ceiling and the water. The other entrance involves a number of tight squeezes. Inside the cave, the river tumbles down a waterfall. The drop is rigged, but it has poor anchors and climbers get hit by the water. Below the waterfall is a very long section of horizontal river passage with lots of current. The river tumbles further into the abyss, but our group of cavers pass beyond it, onto a large breakdown pile. It's here that our patient broke her leg. Her two buddies made her comfortable and then exited the cave to sound the alarm. Our incident commander recruits her staff, and after gathering information about the patient and cave, briefs them on her concept of the operation. This will enable them to focus their efforts. Her concept is that they'll build a camp at the patient's location to keep her stable until the rest of the cave is rigged. That will trigger her evacuation. They're going to rig the river with safety lines and completely re-rig the waterfall. They're also going to have an important decision to make. They're going to need to decide whether to bring the patient out through the low airspace entrance or instead widen the tight entrance enough to get a stretcher through. Our planner now starts to compile his task list. They'll need to recruit a lot of cavers. They'll need to send an initial response team that is equipped to establish a campsite. They'll also need to keep the camp supplied. Once they've acquired rigging supplies, they'll rig the river and the waterfall. Which way to bring the patient out is an important decision, and so they'll need to investigate their options and keep an eye on the weather. And they'll also need to evacuate the patient. Now that the planner has his initial task list, he can start to sequence them out and assign them to teams. He makes an estimate of how long he thinks the rigging will take and how long it will take to move the patient. The rescuers will be working in cold, moving water, and so he decides he'll need multiple teams for each task because they'll each hit their limits before completion. He also decides to get the passage modification team moving in order to recon for any hidden surprises. Next, the planner works on the DSM. The incident commander mentioned one important decision and one important trigger. She said she still needed to decide whether to bring the patient through the crawl or the low airspace river entrance. Consulting some experts, the planner decides that the river height and speed will determine their decision. The IC had also said she wanted to wait until the cave was completely ready before the evacuation team started to move the patient. Some information has come in that there's a dry spot at the bottom of the waterfall. The planner decides to make use of this. He knows that moving the patient towards the exit is definitive care. He decides to propose trigger criteria that can get her moving sooner. If there's a delay in the final preparation of the haul or the exit method, they can always bivouac the patient at the dry spot. The logistics chief has had to supervise lots of different efforts. He identified a reception and staging area. He reached out to the NCRC regional coordinator to recruit cavers. To run the staging area, he's let county EMS know they'll need basing support as well as security to keep away bystanders. To keep the distributed team informed, he sets up a WhatsApp group. He asks another rescuer to check the rescue cache for field phones and then identify where to put their communication hubs. He's now putting together a list of the rigging, cave modification, and camping supplies they'll need so they can ask local cavers for support. The operations chief is dealing with a lot of confusion. The IRT wants to rush into the cave, but he doesn't think they're ready. He pulls the team leader over and has him go over his plan again. He then makes sure his team has inventoried their camping supplies before he allows them to move on into the cave. His next challenge is deconflicting potential traffic jams at the waterfall. He doesn't want multiple teams trying to rappel, climb, and fix the rigging all at the same time. He's also keeping an eye on the staging area, trying to assess personnel numbers and expertise versus what's coming next in the plan. We're going to have an operational period briefing soon, and so the different sections are updating their running estimates. The media is on the way, and so now we have a PIO. The map of the cave is too complicated for the media to show, and so she's been talking to the cartographer about a simpler version. The patient's family is here and distraught, and she needs to keep the media away from them. She thinks her caving buddy will be willing to do an interview. The logistics chief has things going fairly well. He's running low on bolts, though, and looking for alternatives. Lastly, a cave-qualified doctor has become available, and he wants to bring up the possibility of sending him to the patient. In the briefing, the IC's deputy does the roll call and goes over the do-outs from the last synchronization meeting. They've gathered in front of the map, and the ops and logistics chiefs update everyone on the situation and team status. When it's logistics' turn to give his update, he brings up their shortage of bolts and learns about removable screws from a local caver. The PIO lets them know she'll have a better map for them to use in an hour. The planner briefs the staff on the next part of the plan and asks them questions to make sure they've understood him. The Deputy IC reviews the do-outs before turning the meeting over to the IC to give her decisions and guidance. It looks like they have things well in hand, so let's wrap up. In a cave rescue, the command post has a lot to do. The physically difficult work is in the cave, but outside the cave, lots of thought and debate go into making a good plan, getting the right resources, and taming the chaos. I hope this presentation has inspired you, and I look forward to seeing you at future NCRC training events.